This is from July 24th, 2019. And today, competition. The Battle of Water on the playing fields of Eton. Oh, bullshit. Blow it out your ass. Often, when something related to work or reputation is unsettled, I wake up in the middle of the night wondering if I am a pussy, a scared little failure who never achieved a goddamn thing because he took his ball and went home instead of testing his mettle against the other boys. Okay, that was from July 24th. Now, from today, the Rick blog is transformative art, and the transformation happens hopefully in the audience and also in me. So I think the night of July 23rd might have been the last night that I have these particular worries, because I really now am at a point where it's just trying to figure out how to do it, and I don't care about what's going on with the other boys. So this piece is kind of a museum piece because it describes emotional relationships with my brother and my father and the world that no longer exist. All right, back to the July text. Excuse the politically incorrect language, but it is good writing to say pussy here, ladies and sensitive gentlemen, because my thought about being deficient was a chip implanted into me by that evil veterinarian society who wants to keep track of all of its dogs and always be able to fetch them and bring them home. My father and brother were athletes. I'm not an athlete. They loved me and I adored them as a little boy and beyond. They competed with me at gin, at foosball, never at anything important. Otherwise, they rooted for me as I cheered for them. They did that thing that a lot of jocks do, the mind games, the mocking, the taunting, whenever we played. They were older than me, obviously, and better at sports and games. I was smarter than them. I think that's fair to say. And more sensitive, definitely. So I fought back in my own way too. Who am I kidding? But when they razzed me in our games, it really hurt my feelings. They were gods to me, and my kid psyche took it all to heart. I lost confidence when I played those games with the men in my family. I'm not getting all Freudian here. My recurring doubt about competing, now I have is not something I blame on harm done by my dad and bro. And now that's in the past tense. Was not something that I blame on harm done by my dad and bro, because I believe I'm through with competing. So, on the contrary, I think this is a map to what my relationship to competing or lack thereof was. For me, competition is, this is still accurate, a childish thing, games, fun, and entertainment nothing important, unrelated to mature achievement. Okay. It is something I did, good, past tense, with my father and brother. What I remember are not the games per se, but the love, the spending time together, the physical proximity to them. I loved being with them. This passage is kind of like the sentimental stories that you hear on talk shows or ESPN Classic. People like Billy Crystal tell these stories about how they bonded with their distant fathers at Yankees games. Except that my father and brother weren't distant. As I got older, not even that old, I was the one who pulled away. I was bored by the golf course and thought that many of the guys that they played their more serious games with were dumb. Also, I learned another difference from dad and bro. I wasn't a competitor. I was a more serious person destined for more serious things. So if I wasn't a competitor, what was the change? Well, I guess what changed was that I didn't feel bad about being a competitor. I think I've always lived my life the way that I've wanted to. I think it's been a very fulfilling life. I think any hardships I've ever had that I've taken upon myself, I've wanted to take upon myself. But I think a large thing is that I felt bad about things because I didn't understand. So my suffering has been an illusory kind of suffering, and that's a lot of what I have burned out with my writing. Now, what happens if all of that suffering is burned out? Well, then the writing is going to take on a different nature. What kind of nature is it going to take on? I don't know. My family, by natural design, was an entity where people with wildly different personalities and different ideas were condemned to loving one another. Is that every family? Is that your family? I couldn't pick the family that I was born into, and I couldn't escape the love and adoration that I felt for them. I think that passion came with my first breath. I wonder if my brother or father ever woke up in the middle of the night wondering if they were deficient because they weren't smarter or more sensitive like me. The pain I felt from the card game taunts of dad and bro, taunts in retrospect that they weren't very good at. When I think of what I heard once I was out of the family room and out into the world, real emotional violence and meanness. Dad and bro weren't capable of that. They were enjoying themselves. And no, I get it was a little darker than that. They knew they were hurting me. It wasn't that they didn't care, although I'm sure that some of it was for their own agendas, but they also some of it was out of love for me. I mean, they thought that I should toughen up, that I was too soft. They wanted to teach me to win. My father once yelled at me when I was about 8 years old because I was crying in the bathtub from the sting of shampoo in my eyes. He was a sensitive kid, and he hated himself for it. When I was writing a speech that I was to give at my high school graduation, I told my brother that a teacher suggested that I make it funny. I was known for performing comedy at school assemblies. My brother got upset. He told me they just wanted the jokes and no one would respect me for it. My brother was always, in my opinion, overly concerned with what people thought. The opinion of the crowd mattered to him, mattered too much. In my case, it didn't, and I felt guilty because it didn't. And I thought I was wrong for not caring about what other people think. My brother and father loved me, but they wanted me to be someone else, the way a man was supposed to be, rules that they thought were universal. For my part, as I got older, dad and bro came off of their pedestals. I became increasingly critical of them. I thought they should be different too. So the big love and the childish competition became an argument. Eventually, my father died, and my brother and I naturally separated into our independent lives. The love never went away. I was with my father at the end. He was dissatisfied with me on the second last day of his life. He told my brother so. It hurt at first, but I quickly realized that he was dissatisfied with himself. My father and I are very much alike, and I think it has taken 2 lifetimes to resolve some of our ignorances about existing in the world. What dad hated in us is what is best in us. I am still close to my brother, but not involved with his work or friends as I had been in the past. My mother pushed me towards his life. I played the role of lost boy in the family for a period of my adulthood. And mom thought my answers lie with my brother, who was married and had a successful career. We had to work through that well meaning catastrophe. And I know bro was relieved when I disengaged. I was filled with rage in that period, and he was filled with resentment. All that darkness evaporated. We learned, all was forgiven and forgotten. I'll be damned if I can remember all the details of that story. I'm sure they'll come to mind in other contexts. They just don't seem relevant here. I can say that these difficulties did not just pop away in a sitcom resolution. It was a lot of effort on both of our parts. In the end, I became a writer, and he became a nicer guy. Competition is a diversion, an entertainment, a pastime. I was sad when the Bears' Cody Parkey missed the field goal that would have beaten Philadelphia in the playoffs last year. I'm a big Bears fan. My Sunday fun has roots in resonant memory. My brother played for the team as a place kicker. I was interested in his friends when he played on that level. High performance athletes are often, ironically, uncompetitive. Some play the kid stuff head games that my father and bro used on me in foosball and gin rummy. The great competitor Michael Jordan comes to mind. But let's face it, Michael Jordan was an asshole, womanizer, philanderer, corporate hack, could care less about social justice, didn't share his money and success to help many people. Nothing like my preference, LeBron James. Family and community meant zero to Jordan, who lives on golf courses and in gaudy houses and casinos. My brother adopted 2 children, became a judge, very involved in his church, a right wing church that I highly disapprove of, but my approval or disapproval doesn't matter here. It's the existential thing, what the church means to him, the person, not the thing, the who, not the what. My brother is committed to community and helping others. My brother is not an asshole. And neither were the guys that he played with in the 1970s and early 1980s when he was with the Bears. Those guys were nice to me. This was years after my high school graduation speech. My brother now invited me to tell jokes at sports banquets and Bears training camp. We had a lot of fun supporting each other, cheering each other on. Artists, athletes, and human beings need support. We should boost each other in our authentic roles, who God made us, what God made us to do. In the end, it is the love of and for others and for the actions of our lives that matter, not the wins and losses. The Bears players of that era were trying to survive, not get cut, not get injured, and trying to excel at what they did. They respected the other team. They supported each other as teammates and individuals. They were not competitive. It had nothing to do with besting another person. It had to do with being a good person and being good at what you do. I have lived my life like them, and I have nothing to be ashamed of. I am living my life like them, and I am not ashamed. I now avoid competitive people like the plague, increasingly not with anger, fear, or bitterness. This is another transformation that's happening. I don't know if that's the result of art or aging or both. Although some of the anger, fear, and bitterness still remains, there are no sitcom resolutions. I avoid them because between the people that I love and the work that I love, there is just no time for competition. Be best, y'all. Ironic comment. Copyright 2019, Richard Thomas.